Welcome back, guys. Spider from the Sluggers here. We're going to show how to start up the F5. And just like any other aircraft, the F5 was actually exported to NATO aligned countries or Western aligned countries as a simple fighter. Uses mostly Western weapons. So let's jump into it. Um, I will be using a checklist I found on the DCS user files to help us out, and I will have a link on the bottom. And like always, Chuck has a guide for the F5 to help you get through the teething process after you get the module. So let's jump into the cockpit right now, and let's get this thing going. And let's look at the control panel, and with a tip from one of my members on the forums, I will pause my head tracker so you can see what I'm doing here. And occasionally I'll unpause it, and that a shout goes out to Sarah. Always welcome to input for improving these videos. So let's go through the checklist how to get this bird started up and into the air. Excuse me. Breakfast is kind of talking back to me. So let's get right to it. And the first item on before start checklist. Oxygen supply is on. The oxygen supply is over here, and supply is right there, and we'll click it on. We show the flow indicator. Battery on. The battery switch is right here, and we'll click it on. We should hear the gyro start spinning up. Generators left and right both on. So usually in a rear aircraft you push it down to reset the internal circuit breaker, then switch it up. Push down to reset the internal circuit breaker, and push up. Fuel boost pumps left and right on. Boost pumps are right here. We'll click those on. They're electrically driven boost pumps. Got Huey in the distance. Active airport today. And canopy closed. And the canopy here is there. It's actually a manual canopy. So we're going to push that forward. And we lock it. Rotary beacon on. And this is one I have to unpause the head tracker. And rotary beacon right here. We'll click that on. We'll go back and pause the head tracker again. We'll go down to here. There you go. Master caution light clear. Panel check and clear. So we'll hit the notification button, the cancel the indication or acknowledgement button, and the lights we have right now is associated because we don't have the engines running. And we're going to contact the crew chief over the intercom to connect the air hose. So go to the F8 menu, and we're going to add the wheel chocks.
Chief, place the wheel chocks.
And we'll go to external view. Not sure. Yep. Now we have graphics for the wheel chocks now. We'll go and attach to air. I'm not sure if that they have a Wait for the helicopter to go past. And we'll connect the air supply. Go back inside since... And crew chief says ground air supply is connected. Okay. So, before starting, checklist complete. And now we're going to move to start engines. Crew chief, we're gonna ask the crew chief to... The interesting thing about the F5, it has no onboard starter system. And it actually uses air from a ground power unit. All this is a jet engine that blows air, or a high capacity air compressor. It runs through a duct through the connection on the bottom of the aircraft. Most late 60s, early 70s fighters were this way to save weight, because the engine powers of that era wasn't the strongest at the time. So right now we're going to actually have him start up the ground power unit and start blowing air into the left engine to start the sequence up. So we're going to call him on the intercom. Ground air supply, and apply.
Chief, apply ground air supply. Copy.
And as you see, the left engine is starting to spool because it's windmilling from the air flowing through it. And once we get to above 10%, we're going to hit the starter button. And we're going to hit the left engine start. And we have ignition. We're not going to allow... yes, it went through past the red line, but we're not allowed on startup to go past 900. Making sure. 925 degrees during start. Idle should equal out to about 140 degrees. And we have a good start. We'll allow the engines to stabilize. Auxiliary intake doors are indicating are open. And what the auxiliary intake doors are that grill on the side of the aircraft. See the intake door there? It provides extra air to the engine. If we look on the other side, the right engine's not operational, so the doors are not closed. The doors are closed. So these are computer controlled. So monitor 35 seconds, fuel flow, oil pressure. And that. And we look good. And intake door is barber pulled. We're good. So same procedure. You know, we're gonna have the crew chief apply the air to the other engine. We're gonna push the right start button, right throttle to idle. And we're going to monitor the engine idle speed between 49 to 52 RPMs, just above red line. We're not going to let the temperature get above. If it goes above 925, we're going to abort the start. And idle should be right around 140. Nozzle position should be around 60 to 79%. Oil pressure is going to be 400 parts per pph. Right generator is and we're going to monitor the gauges. So what? Once again, we're going to call the crew chief and apply.
Apply ground air supply.
Copy. Air is now applied.
Air is supplied. We're going to wait to a little bit over 10%. Always wait until it gets to virtually the max there. We're going to hit the right start button. Throttle goes to idle. We see the fuel has lit off. We're monitoring to make sure it doesn't go over 925. We got good indications. Showing the auxiliary intakes are in. We're showing good pressure here on the right engine. And we have a good engine light. So since we don't need the the air supply anymore for the engines, we're going to call the crew chief. And we're going to have him disconnect the hose.
Disconnect ground air supply.
Copy. Ground air supply is now disconnected.
Alright. Starting engines, external air checklist complete. So we're going to move to before taxi. We're going to have the first one is crew chief, rearm, refuel as required. We don't need anything like that. Pitch and yaw dampers on. So I'm going to have to unpause the head tracker again. Going to start. And pitch and yaw dampers are right here. We're going to bring them both on. Go back to the front panel and pause. Radar mode to standby. Should have stayed over on that panel. So let's go over here. Radar mode to standby. This actually right here. And we're going to allow the radar to warm up. Flaps are right here. We're going to can't see. We're going to place the flaps into the thumb switch. Flap lever to thumb switch. So the flaps will be used by the switch on the throttle. And we're going to check the flap switch thumb to auto. That it is. Pitch trim as required. We're going to unlock we're confirming the flaps are up since they're in auto. So I'm going to move my head right there, and it's kind of hard to see. And we're going to bring it in just a little bit. Pitch trim indicator is right here, and the F5 has an interesting pitch regiment. So we're going to set it as required, but this checklist I will post the link to it in the DCS user files menu. Has a great chart of figuring your takeoff weight and what you need to set your pitch trim and your liftoff speed should be. So, as we can see, we're going to go outside. All we have is a full fuel supply, gun ammo. So that's going to put the aircraft weight approximately 15,600 pounds. And we're going to be looking for a liftoff speed of 152 knots. And the trim required for this for takeoff is 8, trim of 8. So we're gonna, that's going down, so 0. So we're gonna increase the pitch trim. There's 6, 7, and 8. So pitch trim set for 8. So that is the pitch trim takeoff for our configuration today. So we're going to go back to the before taxi checklist. Pitch trim set. Airspeed bug is set. And 158. So we'll move that, we call it the bug. It's a reference bug. So 160, right about there. A great, guesstimation. Standby, we're going to zoom out a little bit. Standby indicator uncaged. Uncage it and set it. Check. Gun sight mode selection missile. This knob right here, and the first thing is the first indicator. The first setting is missile. RWR power on. Push button right here, and it will go through its self-test. Navigation and communications radios on. Well, that's radio function. So bring it back a little bit more. Yeah, right here. Main to both. Radio is on now. And we don't need the VOR right now, or the TACAN. And master light caution. Fuel and armaments, check quantity. Fuel, we have full fuel load. And pumps are set. And master caution warning. I'm going to take the head tracker off for a minute. Repause it. The acknowledge light is off, and we have a clean board or no lights on it this time. And before taxi checklist complete. So and uncheck. So we just cold started the F5. Very simple thing. And the F5 has some, how can I say, interesting quirks for takeoff. So let's go ahead and go through takeoff here. So, and the RWR has completed its self-test, and the radar is on standby by the symbols on the radar screen. So we're ready for taxi. So we're going to do a control surface check to make sure our hydraulics are good. So we're going to go outside and get a little noisy. I'm sorry. And we're going to do a rudder check, aileron check, and aileron check. We're going to engage the nose wheel steering button and check if the nose wheel steering is active. And it is. We're going to jump back in. we're gonna call the crew chief. External lights as required. We got what we. The beacon should be only good for right now. We'll turn the taxi. Taxi lights and landing lights on. Nose wheel steering and wheel brakes is set and checked. And we're going to call him to one thing that isn't mentioned in the checklist is the speed brakes. Usually the speed brake switch is set where these will go up by themselves, but for some reason we have to pull it back. That's one thing. We have to make sure your speed brakes are retracted because there is no light in the cockpit for it. So, checklist complete for taxi. We're gonna call the crew chief to remove the ground shocks.
Chief, remove the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.
And a little notice about the nose wheel steering. It's very sensitive, and you must hold on to the nose wheel steering button at all times. If you release it as you're removing it, it will stick into that position. So we're going to taxi now to the runway. And we're going to release the brakes. And go ahead and add a little bit of throttle. Enough to get moving. We're going to taxi at a brisk walking pace. And we're going to turn off the head tracker. Turn back on the head tracker because I need to follow the taxi lines and make sure I am not damaging the aircraft. Granted, DCS, we don't end up with the bill with damaged stuff, but this is also a simulation, so we want to simulate real world life. Checking for traffic, and let's go ahead and continue down to the runway. And recenter my head tracking a little bit. And just a lot of people have complained about the beacon light in the aircraft or in the cockpit now. It's the latest in iteration of the DCS. Being a pilot in real life, the beacon actually flashes in the cockpit. So this is actually a very, very real effect. Every once in a while you give little spurts in that to counteract the drag from the wheels on the ground. And since this is a runway, we stop, we check to make sure there's no traffic inbound before crossing. And we're at the runway now. We're checking to make sure. We gotta go through our checklist. Before takeoff, exterior lights as required, check. Pilot anti-ice. And we're gonna pause the head tracker. Pilot anti-ice is here. We're gonna turn it on. Engine anti-ice as required. No icing conditions today, so we're going to leave that off. Master caution, check and clear. We're going to clear the acknowledgement button. I'm going to take off my head tracker for a moment, move it back down there. As you can see, now it's a clean board, so no lights are illuminated. And before takeoff, checklist complete. So we're I'm going to unpause the head tracker. There you go, folks. And now we're going to taxi into our runway. Normally we'll request takeoff, and the
Okchina, Colt, 1-1, request takeoff.
and our lovely, sometimes annoying DCS Auto AI. So we're going to say that we're going to take off. We have permission to take off. For some reason, I don't think I have the radio tuned to the right one. Ah, there it goes. Alright, we got our clearance. We're lined up on the runway. So, takeoff. And I'm going to pause the head tracker. Takeoff. Nose wheel strut to extend. And that's this switch right over here. The F5, due to its wing design, has due to its design, when it's on the ground, air doesn't get over the ailerons that much. It's more dirty air than anything else. So the nose wheel strut is designed to push the angle of attack of the wing up a little bit higher to allow clean air to get to the elevator for control, especially in a very slow speed situation. And it also helps get the nose off the ground a little bit. So what the nose wheel does, so we're going to hit the switch and hike the nose. I guess I'm going to switch the switch. And as you can see, it extends the nose wheel strut to a higher position. Wheel brakes apply and hold. So you see the wheel brakes there. And we're going to advance the throttles to 90%. Throttles mill as we're going to release the brakes at 90%. Throttles military power or max as required. Nose wheel steering disengaged prior to 60 knots. And we're going to rotate 10 knots before our VLO speed of velocity at liftoff. So we're going to rotate. We got a 158 is our number that we're aiming for. So we're going to rotate at 148. So we're going to take add the head tracker back. We're going to center it because sometimes when you pause it, it gets a little weird. So we're going to hold the brakes and run up to 90%. We're at 90%. We've got good throttle engines. We've got good indicators. And me personally, for the F5, because of the very, very sensitive nose wheel steering, I don't use nose wheel steering on the roll, the takeoff roll. I use this differential braking with my rudder pedals. So we're at 90%. We got good pressures and everything, and we're gonna release and advance the throttles to either mill or full afterburners. Airspeed is active, as you can see right here. Airspeed is building. 148, we're rotating, and we're off. Land the gear up. And we're going to bring it back down to mill throttle. Head tracking is going crazy again. Sorry, folks. And fuel auto balancer to. We're always going to adjust the fuel auto balancer to the less tank, so it'll be the left tank. So it's going to feed from the right tank more than the left tank. We're going to trim our nose down. Sometimes you have to return the trim to 0. And radar, engine, anti-ice. So that's it. We're flying the F5. So this is Spider from the Sluggers. Thank you. If you have any questions about the F5 or want to learn more about it, I'll leave a link in the description for Chuck's wonderful guide. Shout out goes to Chuck in our DCS community for doing those guides. I know he does a lot of work on them and a lot of great work. A lot of good history, so I'll post the guide in the description. If you have a question about the aircraft itself, stop over to the Sluggers Discord server, and we actually do have an aircraft area to aircraft forum site for the F5. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them, and we can. The wonderful group of people of the Slugger Squadron can possibly answer those questions for you. And if you want to fly with us, we usually have missions on Sunday. If you guys like to try to fly some missions, interesting, we always are welcome to people. And as of right and we're always looking for people, so if you're interested in joining a DCS squadron, a group of fellow flyers and that, come on over. We do open and close the application process every once in a while, just to give our check ride people, our people who we have come evaluate for the squadron. Instead of giving them an endless list of that, we only open it for about 10 names. And until we get that list done, and we release the names again. And so watch the Discord for when we open the application process and that. Or go ahead and notify one of the command staff that you're interested in joining, and we can see if we can get you on the list for a trek ride. So, once again, this is the F5 turned into the cold start and takeoff. And have a wonderful day. Spider from the Sluggers are signing off. And do a barrel roll. And another barrel roll. And that. So, have a wonderful day, folks.